Donald Trump's ongoing crackdown on immigration continues, this time winning a Supreme Court ruling that says his public charge rule can go nationwide. That's my understanding about it. We have this story from the Washington Examiner. But of course, Sotomayor of the Supreme Court is outraged that the Supreme Court sided with Donald Trump. And she goes on to say that they're basically just doing whatever he wants. This to me is a really bad sign for our country. Accusations of partisan bias in our courts and our politics, scandal after scandal. People want to tell you that civil war isn't possible or isn't real, but I'm telling you we're witnessing it right now. When you have conflicting administrations, when even the Supreme Court is split, and now one side is accusing the other of serving the president or the established, the government's emergency orders, I think we're getting dangerously close to internal conflict in our own government, and I don't think that's going to end well. We're talking about, established administration, like institutions outside of elected representatives fighting each other. But before we talk about this, we got a couple things to bring up. Legal immigration is down 11%. Trump's wall isn't the reason. President Trump's border wall is beginning to rise, but a thick curtain of policy changes is more responsible for suppressing the flow of immigrants into the country. That's the fact from the New York Times, but let's read this op-ed from the Washington Examiner. They write, the Trump administration today is reinstating a Clinton-era welfare reform rule once widely embraced by top Democrats in Congress, requiring immigrants to be self-sufficient, a move that could end up to $3 billion in federal and state welfare payments to them. I'm sorry, this is always confusing to me. Why are we paying illegal immigrants welfare benefits? That seems to not make sense at all. Or people who are here legally who want legal status, like extended status, they're on welfare? Why? Why is our community paying for people who aren't in our community? That seems like weird. It's like having somebody stay at your house and they're like eating all your food and not paying rent. You'd be like, hey, yo, dude, who is this guy? Why is he on my couch and why is he eating my pizza? After receiving a blessing from the Supreme Court Friday, the public charge grounds final rule kicked in nationally, essentially forcing immigrants to prove that they won't become a burden on taxpayers. Under the rule, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services will look at the factors required under the law by Congress, like an alien's age, health, income, education, and skills, among others, in order to determine whether the alien is likely at any time to become a public charge, said an official. Now, to the left, who is outraged by this, including Sotomayor, I'd like you to go and apply for like a visa to Canada, and you can see how they do a scoring system. At least the last time I checked, and maybe they don't do it today, but this is a common thing for most countries. They ask you, like, what language do you speak? What's your education? And they assign a point system where if you don't get enough, you can't come, for the exact same reason. They want you to be a benefit to the country, not a burden. They say the rule is expected to affect millions and force many immigrants to shift off public welfare programs so that they are not deported. Some of the programs covered include supplemental security income, cash assistance from the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, and state or local general assistance programs. The use of Medicare can also be included. Self-sufficiency is a core American value and has been part of immigration law for centuries, said Ken Cuccinelli, acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security and acting Director of USCIS. By requiring those seeking to come or stay in the United States to rely on their own resources, families, and communities, we will encourage self-sufficiency, promote immigrant success, and protect American taxpayers, he said. And I think to a certain degree, he's correct. The issue is, if you give someone fish, you feed them for a day, and if you teach them to fish, you feed them for the rest of your life. But if every day you say, come back, we've got more fish for you, they would never learn. They'll never try to learn. And you will increase it. Look, I don't want to compare humans to animals, but we have signs in parks that say, don't feed the bears, they'll become dependent, and then they'll keep scavenging human, settlements for food. They have to rely on their own. I get it. Bears aren't humans. We take care of humans because, we're human. But I think it's fair to point out similar things happen. If you start giving people things, they won't ever figure out how to get them on their own, and you'll just make everything worse. Within reason, I might add, because I'm in favor of a lot of these social programs, mind you. But there's a certain point where the Band-Aid has to come off, and we have to check to make sure that the wound is healed. Because here's the example I give. These government programs, they put a Band-Aid on the wound, and then instead of taking it off, cleaning the wound, and putting a new Band-Aid on, they just slap another Band-Aid on top. And they keep doing it, and it never heals, and it festers, and it gets worse. That's not what we should be doing. The programs themselves can work if we just have a process for reform. They say the rule recently published in the Federal Register said there will be some costs associated with the change, but that there will also be a substantial reduction in the use of welfare programs. In one section, it was estimated that there will be a reduction of $2.74 billion a year due to disenrollment of foregone enrollment in public benefits programs by foreign-born non-citizens who may be receiving public benefits. Another reduction of $1 billion will come from federal medical spending tapped by immigrants. A Department of Homeland Security official told Secrets that the president's goal was not budget savings, but enforcing laws on the books. The intent behind implementing the inadmissibility on public charge grounds, final rule, is not to save money, but rather to faithfully execute the nation's long-standing public charge inadmissibility law and better ensure that aliens seeking to come to and remain in the U.S. temporarily or permanently are able to support themselves as they seek opportunity here, relying on their own capabilities and the resources of their families, sponsors, and private organizations rather than public resources. Several states have challenged the rule and lost in the Supreme Court. Several Democrats backed the rule when it was okayed in 1996, but have since turned on it. They include Senate Minority Leader Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Steny Hoyer. Which brings me now to the response from Sotomayor. Issues scathing dissent in Supreme Court order that could reshape legal immigration. CNN reports Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote a scathing dissent late Friday night, castigating the government for repeatedly asking the Supreme Court on an emergency basis to allow controversial policies to go into effect and charging her conservative colleagues on the court with being too eager to side with the Trump administration on such requests. The justice wrote that granting emergency applications often upends the normal appellate process while putting a thumb on the scale in favor of the party that won. Targeting her conservative colleagues, she said, most troublingly, the court's recent behavior has benefited one litigant over all others. I think that's silly. Just because they voted against you, you want to act like it's an abuse of power. I mean, maybe that's a bit hyperbolic, but actually write a scathing dissent as though they're doing anything but asking the court for an answer. When Trump says we're going to enact some kind of executive policy, he wants it to be known whether he can or can't immediately. So maybe it's a fair argument to say he should go through the normal process. But if the courts are agreeing to see these and the courts are agreeing, you can't just turn and say, well, ho, harumph, say. The judges that have worked for the federal government for decades who were recently appointed to the Supreme Court are now siding with one litigant over all others. Maybe it's just that you're wrong. That's what's crazy to me. So I'll respect the opinion. That's for sure. 100%. Because it's important we get dissenting opinions that challenge this because we don't want sycophants just, kissing up to Donald Trump. But I think it's fair to point out, with all due respect, you're probably just wrong. This ruling on the welfare charge was okayed by Democrats in 1996. To act like now they're kissing up to Trump when there's precedent for that's on the books already, in my opinion, is frankly absurd. We don't want people coming to this country and then taking our public benefits away. You have to pay in before you get it. I mean, look, I get it. Netflix offers you a 7-day free trial trying to coax you into becoming a customer, but we're not talking about that. So it wouldn't make sense for someone to come here, get free stuff, and then be asked later to contribute. They'll just leave. This was on the books before. It was supported by Democrats before. It in no way makes sense that you could accuse these people of supporting Trump when they're actually supporting a Democrat policy from way back when. They say her dissent was a response to the court's 5-4 order, granting the government's request to allow its controversial public charge rule to go into effect in every state. The rule, controversial, and brought in during Bill Clinton's administration. This is what's mind-numbing to me. The Democrats have changed and flip-flopped so much that when Trump comes out and says, hey, Democrats, I'm going to go with your idea, they're like, oh, harumph, I say, it's controversial. Although the 3 other liberal justices on the bench also dissented, they remained silent and did not join Sotomayor's decision. Claiming one emergency after another, the government has recently sought stays in an unprecedented number of cases. It is hard to say what is more troubling, she pointing out, that the government would seek this extraordinary relief seemingly as a matter of course, or the court would grant it. She noted that in the case at hand, the lower court order that the Supreme Court lifted was narrow and only impacted one state. Then don't take the case. Listen, there are many judges on the Supreme Court. You are but one. There are 9. And you're the one who's upset they're taking these, but everyone else is agreeing to take the requests. You are the odd person out. You lose. It's not a new rule. It's an old rule being reinstated. It has precedent on the books. To act like this is absurd just shows, I think you're a partisan who's mad that you're losing. And that's what we've seen. And that's why I said early on, the fight we're seeing in the government is troublesome to me. The fact that you would be in a court and everyone else is like, yeah, we'll take the emergency. We'll look into it. Oh, okay. We agree 5-4. It was close. And you're like, oh, this is not fair. Oh, we shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, sore loser. Trump won. He got to appoint Supreme Court justices. I do not like what Mitch McConnell did with, who was it, Merrick? Was it Merrick Garland or, Obama's appointee? I don't like what he did with that. Or was it, Garland, I think, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm confusing him with Gorsuch. Anyway, the point is, sometimes you lose. If the rest of the court wants to accept this, if this rule has been in the books before, I'm confused as to how implementing policies that have existed in my lifetime, that have, implemented, taken back, implemented, it's all of a sudden like the world is ending. Orange Man is not that bad. Yeah, he's not the greatest person for a lot of reasons, but calm down, seriously. I got one more segment coming up for you in a few minutes. I will see you all shortly.